嘿，大家好，我是怎么 Jones。今天要跟各位聊的是最新一集的 My The Game， 而之所以会想要出这次的 My The Game 呢，是因为这集的主题完整的去聊了湖人的首轮系列赛，从老詹的角度去看系列赛的各方各面。虽然5万订阅已经达成，但季后赛期间还是希望各位能够帮我继续冲起来，我们就一起来看看吧。
记得订阅、按赞、加入黑组王。
记得订阅，怎么唱
Podcast 最一开始 Nash 先问了老詹在系列赛开打之前是绝大多数人都不看好湖人，而当时球队和老詹个人的心态是如何。
I felt like I had to start with our preparation and our belief. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't matter what the bookmaker are saying or, you know, the experts, so-called experts are saying. The game is always won in between the four lines, and we had to prepare. And obviously we know we was going against, you know, a different circumstance and against the odds, obviously, without Luka, without AR to start the series, and you know, them being, you know, super well equipped and ready for whatever, you know, that we would bring to the table. But the game is, like I said, the game is always won in between the four lines, and if we could prepare ourselves, you know, we could play well, we could compete at a high level, we could bring the physicality that Houston brought to the table. Then we felt like we had a good chance of trying to, you know, win each game, and that's all that mattered. It wasn't about the series. We was like, how can we win one game at a time?
接着聊到湖人火箭的首轮系列赛，那肯定要从超级精彩的第3战开始下手。在那场湖人完成了史诗等级的逆转秀，老詹开始回忆起那个当下。
That was a big time, you know, moment. I think it started with Marcus getting the steal. You know, they fouled him on a 3-point play. He made 3 free throws. We were still down 3. And then I was able to, you know, not foul, try to get a trap in the backcourt, but also I was able to tip the ball away from Reed Shepherd and make the game tying 3 to basically send it over overtime. And guys made plays in the overtime, you know, session, and we was able to win that game. Like you said, that basically was a big time moment for us and helped us win that series.
It's funny, right? Like you think about a series, how it twists and turns, and obviously they played a little better after you guys went up 3-0, but that's the game, right? Like in a sense, that's too much for them to come back.
也如同 Nash 所述，在湖人领先3-0之后，其实各方各面反而都是火箭这边做得更出色，在团队的执行力、积极度等等方面都是。反倒湖人在后面2场是变得有一点点松懈，出现鲜少会有的防守沟通失灵。因此 Nash 也问了老詹，在被火箭追到3-2的时候，团队的状态如何？
Well, I mean, if you're a human being, of course, it adds to the nerves and anxiety. Of course, you know, you come home, you're up 3-1, you know, and you know, the sense of a human being, I believe sometimes you're like, okay, we can kind of relax a little bit, even though you know you can't, because at the end of the day, the series is never over until 4 games is won, and that is always the hardest game. The hardest game is always the closeout game. So, you know, they beat us up pretty bad in Game 4 on their home floor, so they had a little confidence coming in to Game 5, and we played well in the first quarter. We had a 10-point lead, gave up a 3-point play to end the quarter, you know, and then, you know, they just started playing better and better as the quarters went on, and excuse me, was able to beat us, and obviously they felt, you know, super confident. You know, they felt like they were the better team. They felt like them going back home would give them the upper edge. You know, and for me, you know, as a leader of the team, I felt like, you know, it was about, you know, what team can kind of just hold their composure and stay even keel and understand the assignment. And that was kind of like my whole mindset going into Game 6, like, you know, breathing confidence into my guys, understanding like, listen, we're here for a reason, and we can close this thing out if we just limit our mistakes, both offensively and defensively. And that was one of the first times in the whole series that we finally put together a complete game.
老詹也说到，在第4战结束的时候，大家自然都希望能够在第5战的主场关门，毕竟这样能够尽可能的替团队争取休息时间。接着 Nash 问老詹是否会在影片会议的时候提出意见，或是偏向先吸收内容。
You know, I kind of take it all in early on, you know, kind of, especially if it's the beginning of the series, just to kind of, you know, calibrate and see, you know, everything a team wants to do, their pros, their cons, how great they are at something, some of the things we may be able to limit, you know, and I kind of just, you know, put all of that information into the database and let it just kind of work its way through there, and then start, you know, kind of deciphering it and picking through it or whatever the case may be. So as the series goes on or whatever the case may be, I kind of implement, you know, and throughout the series where I felt like, okay, we could have been better here, or, you know, let's not make that mistake there, or we can exploit that. So, you know, I think it's more the vocal part comes as the series goes on.
接着两人谈到了在赛季期间老詹更像是一个第三选择，但却突然在季后赛临危受命成为领头羊，历史上没有一位41岁的球员能够达成这件事。
Like what's that like for you? Like did you like when you're 35? Did you think, yeah, 41, I'll still be playing, I'll still be the best player in a playoff series? Is this normal? Or are you like, wow, I'm still here doing it?
No, I definitely didn't. I didn't believe that. I mean, listen, I came to the Lakers in 2018 at 33. And there's no way if someone had said, would you be playing in 2026 in the postseason, like, you know, just playing. Like, I don't know if I would have been able to answer that question, just playing. And then let alone saying, hey, now you're the number one option on a playoff team and you're helping to win a series. Like, you're the number one option on that team. I wouldn't have believed that. I mean, you know, I knew I still had a lot left in the tank when I came to this franchise in 18. But to say that, you know, 8 years later, you know, at 41, I will be leading the team into the postseason and then, you know, coming out with a series win. I wouldn't have guessed that, and I wouldn't have bet on that.
接着，两人聊到了第三战 Brownie 在偶数节衔阶段上场之后的好表现，可以看到老詹对此是非常的兴奋。
Yeah, that, you know, one of the things that I came into this season, obviously last year, was you know, challenging for everybody, and he was learning his ways on, you know, being a professional, whatever case may be, his rookie year. But you know, he's made so many strides in his second year, and you know, it resulted in him, you know, taking, you know, the moment. Obviously, without AR, without Luka, you know, he was next man up. He was one of the guys that had to step up in his absence, and to share that moment in Game 3. I believe we scored 10 straight points between the two of us. I think we both had a three and we both had a layup, whatever the case may be. I was able to throw him a lob, and we had that mini run between the two of us, and that was just something that I would never ever forget.
再来，两人也谈到了第二战老詹戏耍 Tari Eason 的那个回合，老詹也详细的解释了当时的情况。
You know, the game is you know, I mean, which we saw in Game 3 in Houston, the game is never over until, you know, those zeros on the clock. So even though we had momentum, we had got to stop, we had momentum, you still have to execute, you still have to score. And I felt, you know, at that time they had got a little deflated. They didn't make some of the shots that they made or wanted to make, and we were getting stops. And they were kind of, you know, lagging a little bit, you know, maybe thinking about the previous play. And I kind of noticed that walking down the court. So, you know, I kind of told Smarty, like, hold up. And they all kind of was watching me do that. And at that moment when I saw Tari Eason kind of, you know, just take a little beat and like, okay, I can breathe. That's when I was able to make eye contact with Smarty and get that back door and kind of and pretty much, you know, seal the game after that.
聊完了一些回合和比赛的分析之后，两人在 podcast 的最后几分钟花了一些时间去谈谈个别的每一位球员。首先，先从 Luke Kennard 开始。
Have you helped? Have you been very vocal with him about his ability to be aggressive?
No. Actually, I mean, it all happened by fault. Unfortunately, It's not saying that he's never been able to do that, but when you lose, you know, our team lost so much in Luka and AR, we had to rely on Marcus and Luke, and at times Bronny to be able. We have to create a blender. How can we create us getting into the paint? You know, where we can get the defense shifted from one side to the other side. And we noticed, you know, early on, even before the injuries happened, that Luke had that ability, that he could, because his ability to shoot so well, a lot of teams run him off the line, but they don't also realize that he can also play in the blender where he can make plays from not only himself with his pull-up jumpers and his step-throughs, but he can also make plays where he's spraying out for other guys, and now they're playing against closeouts and things of that nature. So we kind of saw that, a little sample size of it when, you know, AR and Luka were playing. And then when the injuries happened, we knew we was going to need more. We had no choice. We needed that more from him. And
接着老詹也说，肯纳在其他球队的时候，并没有太多教练这样使用他，所以他认为教练团在定位且注意到肯纳这样的能力的观察下也很关键。下一位球员，两人聊到了 DeAndre Ayton。
Yeah, it's just about empowering DA. You know, DA understanding he's the biggest, strongest, one of the most athletic guys on the court. Every night we hit the floor, but empowering him to, you know, rim run. We want to, you know, look for him when he gets early rim runs and seals. He does an unbelievable job of setting screens and getting, you know, defenders off our bodies. And if teams are switching, you know, we want him to bury inside. And he's great in that pocket with that, You know, with that 12 to 15 mid-range shot, he's great in that. He's unbelievable. He had, even in the game that we lost, I think it was game 4 against Houston, he had 10 offensive rebounds. Like, you know, he was such a presence in that game. And we need that from him. We need his ability to, you know, like you said, block a shot or two, you know, but he also change shots. We need him to have the ability to switch off on guards. Sometimes we go 1 through 5, where we switch it and we feel like he has the lateral quickness. He has the ability to guard some of our guards in our league. And he's been great for us, especially in the postseason.
首轮系列赛 DeAndre Ayton 的表现真的是值得大力称赞，尤其针对玄棍的防守，那是真的每一个回合都做得非常到位。就是因为有 Ayton 的单防，才让湖人不用因此出现太多的防线偏移。接着两人下一位聊到了 Austin Reeves。Maybe
just tell the fans out there what that's like to hit playoff intensity with, you know, a month off.
Oh man, yeah, I've never had to go through that, and I can only imagine. Like I did it from preseason to the regular season. I have so much more time to get back into game shape, you know, even with the regular season. But to have to be 4 or 5 weeks out and then have to jump back into a series, especially versus a Thompson twin and Houston and their physicality and their athleticism, you know, it's challenging. And, you know, he came back in game 5 at home, gave us a spark offensively, obviously didn't shoot the ball well, but that just came from I thought I just didn't have any legs, you know, especially late in that game. And I mean, it don't matter how much training, how much rehabbing, how much, you know, court work you're doing, there's no substitution for game fatigue, you know. So, but I thought in 6 he did a great job of like attacking the paint, you know, just giving us that presence. We need another guy that can get in the paint and create the blender, and that's one guy that can do that.
关于 AR 的部分，昨天的战况也已经有聊到过了。其实投不进球那真的都还好，但晃神开始奇怪的硬打那就是个问题了。就希望他能够赶快调整回来，否则努力一整个球季的身价那是真的也要没了。接着两人谈到了教练团的努力，在首轮系列赛教练的赛前设定是真的做得非常的出色。
Yeah, I think like we just preached on. We understand it like the team that we were playing, like, and we knew it would take a little time to get into the fight of it. And you know, we had 2 main keys. It was protect the ball and block out. Like, you know, we were playing against a team in Houston who was the best offensive rebounding team in the last 25 years. You know, so you know when they miss shots, you know they're getting second and third chances, and it's just too hard, especially in the postseason, to give teams multiple opportunities. And then if you're turning the ball over and they're too fast, they're too athletic, they're too quick, and you're giving them pick sixes. And we saw, you know, what can happen, you know, in that game 5, you know, in that game 4 where we turned the ball over and you know we didn't clean glass as much. So they were very strategic and very on point about how we wanted to execute against Houston.
Podcast 的最后一段，两人聊到了次轮面对到雷霆的分析，我们就把这段当作是今天的结尾吧。
Yeah, I mean, it's the same approach as last series. I mean, we're undermanned and we're the underdog, and we understand that. But it's even so you heighten that even more by like 5, you know, because of you know their ability and what they bring to the table. They're one of the most historic basketball teams, offensively and defensively, that our league has seen. And they got one of the most you know efficient players in our league history, and probably is going to be the MVP again. You know, so we have to. We cannot shortcut the details. You know, in order for us to give ourselves a chance to win games, we cannot shortcut the details in the game plan. And we know we can't stop everything. It's impossible. They're that great. But if we can control the controllables, which is another one of not turning the ball over, because we know how great they are when it comes to pick sixes and how handsy they are and the athleticism and speed that they play with. Then you know we can give ourselves a chance, and that's all you can ask for in the postseason is a chance to compete and compete to win games.
好了，那么以上就是今天的影片。如果你喜欢这部影片，请记得按赞、订阅、分享给更多人知道。最近在脆上蛮火网的，有兴趣也可以追踪一下。那么我们就下部影片再见啦。